The shadow of the old way. A brutal sandstorm sweeps through Birdsville, and the town's beloved postman vanishes without a trace. Detective Anna must unravel the mystery buried beneath ancient legends before the desert claims another victim. Part 1. The Whispering Sandstorm. In the remote, sun-baked expanse where the vast, ochre-dusted plains of the Simpson Desert met the sparse, resilient life of the Australian outback, lay the tiny, isolated town of Birdsville. It was a place defined by its remoteness, a cluster of weathered buildings clinging to existence on the very edge. On this particular day, a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air. It was Clive's last delivery, a bittersweet farewell before his well-earned retirement. He set out, as always, a symbol of steadfast routine against the wild, untamed backdrop. But the desert, as always, had its own plans. Without warning, the sky, once a brilliant, endless blue, began to darken, bruised by an ominous, swirling red. A sudden, ferocious sandstorm, unlike any seen in years, descended upon Birdsville with the force of an ancient, angry god. The wind howled, a banshee's shriek, whipping up the fine, red dust into a blinding, suffocating vortex. The town vanished, swallowed whole by the tempest, and out in the vast, open expanse, Clive's jeep, a tiny speck against the monumental fury, was engulfed. Hours later, as abruptly as it had begun, the storm began to relent. The howling wind subsided to a mournful sigh. The blinding dust slowly settled, revealing a landscape transformed, painted in a uniform, eerie red. The air, once thick with grit, now held a strange, unsettling calm. It was in this unsettling quiet that the discovery was made. Not far from the Nulla Nulla camp, a place steeped in local lore, stood an ancient banyan tree. Its gnarled roots, thick as python coils, seemed to grasp at the very air, a sentinel guarding an untold past. And there, stuck in a drift of freshly settled sand, was Clive's distinctive Jeep. Its engine was cold, its doors slightly ajar, as if he had just stepped out for a moment. But Clive was nowhere to be found. The local police, few in number and accustomed to petty squabbles rather than baffling disappearances, were quickly on the scene. Their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and growing unease. The most chilling detail, however, was the mailbag. It lay on the passenger seat, intact, its canvas bulging with letters and parcels, every piece of mail accounted for. Nothing had been stolen, no sign of struggle, no indication of foul play. Clive had simply vanished. The news spread through Birdsville like wildfire, igniting not just fear, but a deeper, more primal dread. Whispers began to circulate, hushed and fearful, of the shadow of the old way. An ancient legend that spoke of the desert's mysterious power to claim those who ventured too far or disturbed its slumber. The desert had swallowed Clive whole, leaving behind only a chilling mystery and the unsettling echo of an old, forgotten tale. Part 2. The Untouched Mail. The news of Clive's impossible vanishing reached the nearest major town, prompting the dispatch of Detective Anna Reed. A woman in her late 30s, Anna was sharp, pragmatic, and possessed the inherent skepticism of a seasoned city detective. Her world was one of facts, forensics, and logical deductions, and she approached the notion of local legends with a thinly veiled cynicism. Arriving in Birdsville, the vast, silent expanse of the outback immediately felt alien to her, a stark contrast to the concrete jungles she was accustomed to. The local police, a handful of officers more accustomed to minor infractions than baffling disappearances, were clearly out of their depth, their faces etched with a mixture of frustration and a quiet, almost superstitious dread. Anna wasted no time. Her first priority was the scene itself, the Nulla Nulla camp, a desolate, sun-baked clearing, dominated by the colossal presence of the ancient banyan tree. Its gnarled, intertwining roots seemed to writhe from the earth, a living monument to centuries past, casting long, distorted shadows that danced in the harsh afternoon light. Clive's distinctive jeep sat silently, half buried in a drift of red sand, a lonely sentinel in the vast emptiness. Anna approached it methodically, her movements precise and unhurried. She circled the vehicle, her keen eyes scanning for any sign of a struggle, a scuff mark, a broken branch, anything to suggest a violent abduction or a desperate fight. There was nothing. The sand around the jeep was disturbed only by the tracks of the investigating officers and the faint, almost erased imprints of the sandstorm. She opened the jeep's door, the interior still thick with fine dust. Her gaze immediately fell upon the mailbag, resting undisturbed on the passenger seat. This was the most unsettling detail of all. A thief would have taken the mail. A struggle would have scattered it. But it was perfectly intact, every letter, every parcel still inside. She carefully examined the contents, noting the addresses, the postmarks, confirming that nothing was missing. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no evidence of a struggle within the vehicle itself. It was as if Clive had simply stepped out and dissolved into the air. As she worked, she felt it, a subtle, unsettling presence. It wasn't a chill or a sound, but a pervasive feeling of being watched, a heavy stillness that permeated the air around the banyan tree. The tree itself seemed to loom, its ancient branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, its very essence exuding an aura of timeless mystery. A local officer, a young man clearly unnerved by the atmosphere, cleared his throat nervously. Some of the old-timers, they're talking about the old way, detective, says this place, it's got a history. Anna merely grunted, her expression unreadable. History's one thing, Constable. Evidence is another. She dismissed the folklore with a wave of her hand, but even her pragmatic mind couldn't shake the peculiar, almost palpable energy emanating from the ancient banyan. A silent observer to a vanishing act that defied all logic. Part 3. Whispers of the Old Way. Back in Birdsville, Detective Anna Reed embarked on the arduous task of interviewing the townsfolk. A community as tightly knit as the desert itself was vast. She moved from the dusty general store to the weathered pub, encountering a complex tapestry of emotions. The raw grief for their missing postman, the palpable fear that now gripped the small town, and a deep-seated, almost reverent belief in the local legend that permeated their lives. Clive, it turned out, was more than just a postman. He was the town's lifeline, a symbol of reliability in an unpredictable world. His disappearance was not just a crime, but an existential threat to their sense of order. Each conversation inevitably circled back to the sandstorm, its unusual ferocity, and the chilling connection to the shadow of the old way. It was Old Man Billy, a respected indigenous elder whose eyes held the wisdom of generations, who reluctantly offered the most fragmented yet compelling insights. He sat quietly, his gaze fixed on a distant point, before beginning to speak in a low, resonant voice. He spoke not of spirits in the conventional sense, but of a desert force, an ancient presence that claimed those who disrespected the land's sacred paths or disturbed its slumber. It wasn't malicious, he implied, but simply was a part of the desert's unforgiving nature. Billy hinted that Clive, despite his good heart and innocent intentions, might have inadvertently strayed onto forbidden ground, or perhaps, in his final delivery, disturbed something ancient and powerful. The old way. It remembers, Billy murmured, his words hanging heavy in the air. It takes what it's owed. Anna listened, her logical, investigative mind struggling to reconcile the pervasive, unsettling folklore with the stark absence of conventional clues. Her training screamed for tangible evidence: footprints, struggle marks, a motive, a suspect. But the desert offered none of these. The sand had erased all, leaving only the chilling void where Clive had been. The more she delved into the town's beliefs, the more the lines between fact and legend blurred. The sheer conviction in the townsfolk's voices, the raw fear in their eyes, was unsettling. It wasn't just a story to them. It was a living, breathing truth, woven into the very fabric of their existence. During one of her solitary visits back to Nulla Nulla Camp, a small, unexplainable incident occurred that unnerved even Anna's hardened skepticism. As she stood by the silent jeep, the air suddenly grew heavy, an inexplicable cold spot forming around her despite the desert heat. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to ripple through the banyan tree's leaves, though there was no wind. Then, a fleeting shadow, darker than the surrounding gloom, seemed to dart across her peripheral vision, vanishing before she could fully turn. She dismissed it as fatigue, as the power of suggestion, but the feeling of being watched, of an ancient presence observing her, lingered, a prickle on her skin that she couldn't shake. The lack of conventional answers, combined with these unsettling phenomena, forced Anna to confront the terrifying possibility that Clive's disappearance might indeed be something beyond human understanding, something that defied the very logic she relied upon. Part 4. The Desert's Embrace. Armed with Old Man Billy's cryptic advice, a series of subtle hints about ancient pathways and the desert's deceptive nature, Anna made a decision that went against every instinct of her city-bred caution. She would venture deeper into the unforgiving heart of the Simpson Desert, alone. The sandstorm's aftermath had indeed erased most conventional tracks, leaving a vast, featureless expanse of rippled red sand. Yet as she pushed her way through the challenging terrain, her sharp eyes began to discern subtle signs that defied logic, faint disturbances in the sand that suggested Clive hadn't simply vanished, but had been taken. These weren't footprints, but almost imperceptible shifts in the dunes, a slight indentation here, a disturbed patch of pebbles there, leading her further into the desolate wilderness. The desert, however, was a formidable adversary, its beauty as treacherous as it was captivating. As Anna pressed on, she began to experience strange, disorienting phenomena that tested her resolve and chipped away at her ingrained skepticism. Mirages danced on the horizon, shimmering pools of water that beckoned deceptively, only to vanish as she approached. At one point, she stepped into an inexplicable cold spot. It was a reclusive prospector, his face weathered by years of sun and wind, his eyes holding a depth of knowledge that spoke of a life lived in profound communion with the land. He watched her approach with an unnerving stillness, offering no greeting. Anna, her voice hoarse from the dust and her growing unease, explained her purpose. The prospector listened, his gaze unblinking, then slowly raised a gnarled hand, pointing towards a distant, shimmering heat haze. He spoke in a low, gravelly voice, not of spirits, but of the desert's breathing, of places where the earth itself could open and close, swallowing anything that strayed too close. He offered a final, chilling piece of the puzzle, a detail about how the sandstorm's unique atmospheric pressure could create temporary, unstable pockets in the very ground, hinting at a truth beyond human understanding. Anna stared at him, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to click into place, forming a terrifying picture. This was no ordinary disappearance. This was something far more ancient, far more powerful, and utterly terrifying. The desert was not just a backdrop, it was the perpetrator. Part 5, The Revelation, back in Birdsville. The oppressive weight of the desert's ancient secrets began to lift as Anna pieced together the final chilling clues. Her sharp, pragmatic mind, initially resistant to the whispers of folklore, had now integrated the wisdom of Old Man Billy with her own meticulous observations. The shadow of the old way, she realized, was not a malevolent spirit or a vengeful entity, but something far more insidious and terrifying in its natural indifferent power, a unique geological phenomenon, a hidden trap within the very fabric of the Simpson Desert, exacerbated by the violent sandstorm. It was a vast, quicksand-like pocket, a deceptive expanse of fine, almost powdery sand that, when agitated by extreme weather or unwary footsteps, could swallow a man whole, leaving no trace. For generations, the indigenous people had understood and respected its boundaries, interpreting its deadly nature through their legends, a warning passed down through oral tradition. Clive, in his unwavering dedication to his final mail run, had unknowingly strayed from the established, safe paths, venturing too close to this ancient, hungry maw. A vivid, horrifying reconstruction played out in Anna's mind. Clive, battling the blinding fury of the sandstorm, his jeep already bogged near the banyan tree, likely dismounted to assess the situation, or to try and free his vehicle. The howling winds, thick with red dust, would have disoriented him, obscuring the treacherous ground. In his desperate struggle, he must have stepped onto the unstable surface, the fine sand giving way beneath him with terrifying speed. There would have been no struggle, no scream heard above the storm's roar, just a swift, silent descent into the desert's unforgiving embrace. The mailbag, left untouched in the jeep, was a testament to his sudden, unexpected vanishing, a stark symbol of a life abruptly cut short. Anna found the definitive proof not far from the banyan tree, hidden beneath a thin layer of freshly settled sand, a faint, almost imperceptible depression, and deeper within it, a single mud-caked boot print, unmistakably Clive's, leading into the heart of the treacherous pocket. Nearby, tangled in the roots of a low-lying bush, she discovered a small tarnished brass button, torn from Clive's uniform. It was enough. A final shot of the ancient banyan tree, its gnarled roots still grasping at the air, where the endless, shimmering desert landscape served as a silent reminder. The mystery was solved, but the power of the old way endured. A timeless warning from the heart of the outback.